someone. My lord, your time has come right between the eyes. Felled his master not by chance, away with pomp and circumstance. Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. Pot Nazi, pot King Billy. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb. Goodbye to the crown. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown.
Hello there and welcome to the Monarchy, the 90th edition, may I say, here on Press TV. I'm Samson Sees as your host, yet again on this controversial programme that concerns Britain. We give you political stories related to the not-so-okay UK, but from an alternative angle that you will not come across on mainstream media channels. On this episode, it's all eyes on the bosses of the British Broadcasting Channel, otherwise known as the BBC. What have they been up to? Well, it looks as though the channel is being biased when it comes to the subject of Gaza and the Palestinians. This is what we're talking about. The charred body of Mohammed Abu Khudair, a 16-year-old from the Palestinian neighborhood of Shufat in occupied East Jerusalem Al-Quds, was found shortly after his family reported that he was kidnapped. An autopsy revealed that he was burned to death. Since news broke out that his murder was a revenge killing by savage settlers, the BBC is struggling to whitewash the incitement coming from the highest levels of the Israeli government and the race riots that preceded Abu Khudair's suspected lynching. But why?
April 2013 is the month that a new Director General took up his post at the BBC and within 2 weeks had installed a lineup of hardline Zionists at the top of the world's largest publicly funded news organisation. Tony Hall, whose role as Director General commenced on the 2nd of April last year, is a former BBC Director of News and can boast a total of nearly 30 years working at the corporation. As such, he is well versed in the BBC's values. He knows what the BBC wants. Soon after his own appointment, Hall named James Harding as the BBC's new Director of News and Current Affairs. Harding was editor of The Times, an avowedly right-wing pro-Israeli paper owned by Rupert Murdoch's News International Group. In 2011, Harding spoke at a media event organised by the Jewish Chronicle, telling his audience, "I am pro-Israel. I believe in the State of Israel." I would have had a real problem if I had been coming to a paper with a history of being anti-Israel. And of course, Rupert Murdoch is pro-Israel. The strongly Zionist Jewish Chronicle reprinted those words with glee as news of Harding's BBC appointment broke, and it also took the opportunity to remind its readers that during the Israeli massacre in Gaza in late 2008 and early 2009, when more than 1,400 Palestinians were slaughtered, Harding wrote a Times editorial entitled "In Defense of Israel." Now bringing his pro-Israel biases into the top ranks of the BBC, Harding will be in charge of its flagship news and current affairs programme, including Today, Newsnight, Panorama and Question Time. He will also be responsible for daily news bulletins on the BBC's main television channels and radio stations. According to The Guardian, Harding now holds arguably the most important editorial job in Britain. The news of his appointment to the £340,000 per year post comes just a fortnight after the former Labour Party minister, James Purnell, took up his new position at the BBC as Director of Strategy and Digital. Purnell, who was one of Hall's first appointments, served for 2 years while in Parliament as chairman of the Westminster lobby group Labour Friends of Israel. Hugely influential, Labour Friends of Israel has drawn support from senior figures within the party, including the former Prime Ministers Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Unsurprisingly, Purnell subscribes to the Zionist view, often taken in BBC News reporting, that Israel can do no wrong. Rather than as an aggressive occupier, Purnell portrays Israel as a victim of hostile terrorist Arab neighbours. In a letter to Prospect magazine in 2004, Purnell wrote of the comparison made by campaigners between Israel and apartheid-era South Africa, saying, "I find it hard to reconcile that image to the reality on the ground. Israel is a democracy, suffering terrorist attacks, surrounded by countries that don't recognize its existence, the victim of well-funded terrorist organizations that preach anti-Semitic hate." However, Purnell's fact-free propagandized view of Israel will not be out of place at the BBC. The irony, of course, is that under the terms of its royal charter, the BBC is meant to be committed to impartiality in its broadcasting. That it is not can be evidenced in Hall's third appointment, the promotion of former Today editor Seri Thomas to the post of BBC Head of Programming.
What you have to remember with the BBC is that it's a taxpayer-funded organisation, so it has a huge responsibility that the other broadcasters don't have, to be fair and balanced and impartial, and also to be accurate. And if those are the things that you expect from a public service broadcaster.
In his last full year as editor of Today, Thomas presided over a programme that interviewed a senior Israeli politician or ambassador on average once every 2 months. Interviewees included Danny Ayalon, then Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, and Zippy Livni, an architect of the 2008-2009 Gaza massacre. During the same period, not a single Palestinian leader or spokesperson was accorded a similar honour. There was no serious recognition under Thomas's reign at Today of the Palestinian viewpoint. After each interview, the UK-based Palestine Solidarity Campaign wrote to the Today programme to ask why Israel's ongoing occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, in the face of international condemnation, had been airbrushed from the conversation. Each time, this reply was received. It simply wouldn't be possible to discuss the complexities of the Middle East conflict during such a brief interview. So, over the course of 6 interviews in 12 months, each one about 5 or 6 minutes long, the Today programme under Thomas couldn't find a moment to bring up the Israeli occupation with the Israeli top brass it was interviewing. All that airtime was needed to discuss not Israel's aggression, but its own perceived victimhood.
Friends, the BBC would never be allowed to broadcast any message from Jesus, because Jesus told us to love our neighbours. And if the Archbishop of Canterbury read the 10 Commandments, it might upset the Israeli government. Now, I say this to you because it's very important that we remember who we are. I tell you who we are today. We are the human race here outside the BBC. It doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, a Buddhist, an atheist, whether you're black or white, doesn't matter. We're people, and this is a people's voice demanding justice. And I'm absolutely sure that we're going to win this.
Well, the BBC in the UK commands 70% of the audience reach. So, you know, it's almost a near monopoly. It's also got a global reach, but it's failing to put out, you know, the full information on Palestine.
People rely on the BBC to give them a reliable picture of what's happening around the world. And if they're giving a biased view, that's not fair on the British public, who have a right to know what's happening in Palestine. They have a right to know that one of our closest allies, Israel, is arresting little Palestinian kids on the street, is arresting people without charge, putting them on trial without access to lawyers. The human rights are being denied to Palestinians, and the British people have a right to know that that's what's happening.
A new chapter in the Scottish independence referendum story is being written, because we've now entered into the official campaign period. Voters have got about 16 weeks to listen, watch and read all the arguments from both sides of the campaign in order to make up their minds. We are closely following the events in Scotland and considering the importance of the issue. I have interviewed Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos to draw us a picture of the developments for you. The campaign in favour of Scotland remaining in the UK, Better Together, was launched on the 25th of June 2012, a month after the campaign in favour of Scottish independence, Yes Scotland, was launched. How are these campaigns currently performing?
Well, firstly, let's just be clear about something. The Scottish referendum is a hugely momentous occasion for Scotland, but also the rest of the United Kingdom. And in the event of Scotland voting for independence, that could set a precedent, that could open the floodgates, because in years to come we could see a similar event occur in Wales, and we could also see it in Northern Ireland occur. So should Scotland vote for independence, that's not going to be the last of it. We could see other regions of the United Kingdom vote or choose to hold a referendum, and that could further weaken Britain. But in terms of what's happening at the moment in Scotland, going by the most recent opinion poll, the No camp still have quite a large margin in the support which they're gaining from Scottish people. I think at the moment the amount of people who are saying they will vote for independence is about 35–36%. So certainly momentum is with the No camp. However, we still have about 2.5 months until the referendum. Now in politics, 2.5 months is a very, very long time. And so the Yes camp, led by Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon, it's all to play for them. And I think that even opponents of Alex Salmond at Westminster will acknowledge that the SNP leader, the Scottish National Party leader, is a very shrewd politician. He's a very capable politician. So while at the moment it's looking like most Scottish people will vote to stay within the United Kingdom, I don't think anyone should underestimate Alex Salmond in being able to pull off a surprise result.
Does it mean that people in the other nations, such as Wales and Ireland, can take this opportunity to question the centralised power of London and possibly seek independence?
I think that in Wales there's a strong Welsh national identity, but I think it's fair to argue it's not quite the same as Scotland, and that's evidenced by a number of factors. But for example, there is the English legal system which covers England and Wales. The English legal system does not cover Scotland. Scotland has a parliament, Wales doesn't. Wales has an assembly. So in theory, it's possible that a similar movement could emerge, but I think we're talking about in the far distant future. However, Northern Ireland certainly is a case in hand, because Northern Ireland, at the moment, it has a majority Protestant population, and of course the vast majority of Protestants, they're loyalists, which means they are loyal to the union with the United Kingdom. So they want to be a part, they fiercely want to be a part of Great Britain. However, the Catholics, at the moment they're in the minority, and the Catholics, the majority of them, they seek reunion with Southern Ireland, with the Republic of Ireland. So what will happen in 10 years' time, 15 years, 20 years' time, when the Catholics become the majority in Northern Ireland, which they will become, because Catholic families in general have more children. So when the day comes when the Catholics form the majority, that's the day when the first talk could commence of there being a referendum in Northern Ireland about separating from Britain, either becoming independent or seeking reunion with the South. If that should happen, potentially that could be a very, very dangerous affair, because for nearly 30 years we had what's known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland, the violence between the two communities, which sucked in the British Army, and which also brought in major British cities such as London, Manchester, Birmingham. Bombs were planted. So if that should happen in Northern Ireland, that would be a very, very dangerous scenario which could unfold for the province and for the rest of the country, because it would pit both communities potentially against each other once again.
What is the most important factor in shaping the public opinion?
There's an expression which is commonly used in British politics when it comes to an election, and we can apply it to a referendum. What do people vote for? The most fundamental issue, quote, "It's the economy, stupid," end quote. It's the economy, that's what matters. Now, in the last few weeks, the No camp have been making, I would argue, a devastating argument for economic reasons for Scotland staying a part of the United Kingdom. A lot of big businesses in Britain, and in particular big businesses which are based in Scotland, have come out openly and publicly to state that they are opposed to independence, and if Scotland was to become independent, they would move their offices south back into the rest of the United Kingdom. So over the next few weeks, or the next 2.5 months, the Yes campaign will be focusing on the economy. There's no question about it. That is the killer issue for the Scottish electorate. But likewise, for the Yes campaign, they will be arguing that Scotland can survive, economically speaking, as an independent country. And their argument will be on a number of things. But one of them will be that Scotland has a very large industrial sector and produces a lot of manufactured goods, and Scotland would be free to export to whoever it wants. The Yes camp will also be saying that in the event of independence, Scotland would become a major oil exporter, and of course one of the countries that would be a major importer of Scottish oil would be the rest of the United Kingdom. And I think also the Yes camp will argue that if smaller countries, for example in Europe, can survive as independent states, such as those countries which became independent after Yugoslavia collapsed, say Macedonia, Montenegro, Bosnia, if they can survive, why shouldn't Scotland be able to survive? So over the next few weeks there will be other issues which both camps will be addressing, but ultimately it's the economy. When people vote in an election or on a referendum, what's on their minds? First and foremost, it's what's good for my bank account, what's good for my family, what's going to give me money. It's the economy that matters for both the Yes camp and the No camp.
A veteran campaigner for Scottish independence has accused the so-called cybernats, a tirade of internet abuse, of opening the door to a possible MI5 dirty tricks campaign to scupper a yes vote in the forthcoming referendum. How likely is it that the London government would resort to a game-changer dirty trick in the weeks to follow?
Well, Alex Salmond and the rest of the Yes camp will argue, and have already argued, that there's been a lot of scaremongering by the British government and by other people in the No camp, and they argue that the scaremongering, it concerns economics. But I don't think that we will see London get involved in that sort of behaviour, because it could backfire. Because, of course, Scotland, or the Scottish people, they're a very proud people, they're very patriotic people. They love being Scottish. Scottish first, British second. And if you're talking about floating voters in Scotland, i.e. those people that haven't yet decided, if they see politicians at Westminster, English politicians, trying to bring about negative campaigning in the referendum, that could just make them vote yes. As Napoleon once said, it could be the drop in the cup which causes the cup to overflow. So I think politicians at Westminster are acutely aware that any form of negative campaigning could very well play into the hands of the yes camp.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles. Remember, if you wish to talk to us about the BBC content, Gaza or anything else, get online with us via email or Facebook. We always want to hear about your ideas and opinions, whether you agree with us or oppose us. Our social page goes by the name UK Desk Press TV, and our email is britain@presstv.ir. We'll be waiting for you, because you've been watching The Monarchy, and The Monarchy has been watching Britain. See you next week, God willing. Be well. Ciao.
Someone, my lord, your time has come, right between the eyes. Fell his master not by chance, away with pomp and circumstance. Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch you all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. Pot Nazi, Pod King Billy. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb. Goodbye to the crown.